Okay, so I'm going to go through how I might process the original prep data using PowerQuery. Okay, so that's the prep example data. So we're going in here and we're going to track down the folder which contains all those Excel files and just importing it. Now we click on the transform data to bring up the PowerQuery editor. And if you remember from the Tableau Prep demonstration, we process these individually. So we're going to start with January. And to isolate January files, I'm using this little filter here. Duplicating again, similar process for February. And lastly for March as well. Okay, so now we've got three subqueries, if you will. And we want to open up the data from each of the files contained in those subqueries. So here, right-click Transform Data on that little folder icon there, which is something I didn't really know until I saw it done on a YouTube video. So what this does is it reveals to us the sheets and the files. Yep, once again, we're deselecting all those default options. Yep. So yeah, this reveals all the sheets inside all the files. And now we're going to go ahead and expand all the data that's contained in all those sheets. And now we're going to do the same thing for February. So revealing all the individual sheets inside all of those files. And then expanding it. And then expanding the data. I do this load more just to make sure I'm getting all the columns. All right. And finally, we do January as well. Okay. So there's three extra columns that are generated as part of the importing process that we don't actually need. We don't actually want those three columns to be tacked on to the end of our raw data once we expand it. So I just go through back to those steps and just remove it. Remove those three columns. Okay. So now we're looking at tackling March. And if you will remember, March was actually the easiest month of data to do. And it's because the data is pretty consistently formatted. So all the files and sheets are structured in the same way. And that step just there was to remove the header columns from the files after the first file that was imported. Then we unpivot. So this gives us a category column and then an info column, which we then proceed to split out by the pipe delimiter. And then we just go ahead and rename the columns to an appropriate label. And once again, put the sheet name is actually the week, and we're just relabeling file as file. Okay, we then move on to February, which is even a step up in difficulty. So looking at this one here, we can see that for some sheets within certain files, the structure was slightly different. In particular, we see that some of them have this last week's rank and weeks on list column that's out of place. So what we go through here and do is we remove all the header rows from that were not in the first file that was imported. Okay. So I just do a bit of checking there. And I go ahead and change it to text, and changing it to text allows me to use this special filter, which is text contains. So I want to filter down to those sheets which included the rank and weeks on list column in that place there. I just want to call that other and rename appropriately that column is rank and this column is info. This last column here doesn't actually contain any info. So I go back to the start and I just remove that whole column from an earlier step. And here I'm adding a new step, and that's because I want to create a step that's the opposite of the previous filter that I did. Okay, so these are the rows from the sheets that were formatted correctly, like the rank was in the correct column. So I do a little trick here where I go to append the data, and I say I'm appending it to itself, so just doubling the content, but I actually want to append it to that file there, that renamed columns 2. Yep, so I go ahead and just change that, and that is stacking it on top of the rows that I just corrected previously. Now we go ahead and we split it by pipe. Yep, so I make a little mistake there, but that's all right. You'll also notice as well that some of the last week and weeks on list values have actually been formatted automatically by Excel as dates, which is quite inconvenient for us, and there's no way around it. There's no way to stop that from happening. You just have to work with it going forward. So it is possible to extract the month and the day out of a date and use those as the rank and the weeks on list values, but it's just annoying that we have to resort to that. So here we go, just tidying up those columns, extracting out the ISBNs, merging those two together. And then just getting the author and price out of the column, removing the original, and then just splitting this into author and price separately. Probably didn't need to relabel that at that point, but that's okay. This is when I realize my mislabeling from before and correct it back to title, which is the appropriate. Okay, so now the renaming to author works. And then the rename to price. Filtering out that ISBN from the ISBN column. And then I think we were looking to correct those dates, but in the end I think I just decided to leave it and worry about it some other time. Okay, so now we tackled January, and January was the most complicated one to process. And the reason why is because the headers between different files become out of sync. Sorry, not between different sheets, because January only has one file. So what we're doing here is we're actually going to go ahead and isolate the headers specifically. And we do this by filtering down to the columns, to the rows that include the word rank in that column. So these are the headers for each of those specific sheets. And you can see how they become out of sync further down the line. So what we need to do is unpivot this, and then we've got a clear identification for each sheet what each column label or what each header should be. Okay, then we go back and we create an additional step, and this allows us to do the inverse or the complement of isolating that header rank, header rows. So these are all the data points. These are all the values. And note that that ranking column, which is column 1, is still there. And this is important because that rank applies all the way across to the specific books. So now, knowing what we know about the headers of each individual file, we can go and do this join. We say it's a current join, but we specify those particular columns, So this would be joining it to itself, and it's just a temporary measure that we have to do because we're going to go back and correct it and join to the columns in just a second. Join to the header columns. So instead of joining to itself, we change this so that it's joining to the header columns, and then we just expand it out, and we expand out the name of the header. So there we go, we got a value and the header pairs. That's quite a little nifty operation, in my opinion, but very common and very useful to do when you've got complicated headers in your imports. When you're doing bulk imports. At this point, I realize I forgot to add in an index column, and the index column is very important for a later step, as you'll see. So here I just added in so that it doesn't get pivoted as well. Okay, and that row allows us to pivot out. You'll see in just 1 second. So we break out the category, and that becomes our column. And we just have a look here to determine that, yep, it's done correctly. And these are all the other columns. So we want to actually, after we trim the text, we're going to go ahead and pivot this out. And having the index column there allows us to pivot it out. If we didn't have the index column, we'd have too many values for each row. Okay, so there it's gone ahead and pivoted it out correctly. The real thing that was throwing a spanner in the works was that some categories had its own ranking column, and other categories just relied upon that first column containing the rank, and that applied across all columns. So I'll just demonstrate this. I'm just bringing it closer so you can see. But yeah, so it never conflicted with the actual ranking, overarching ranking column. So it means we just go ahead and delete it. Yep, and then we no longer need that index because that just tells us the position of that particular book in each sheet, so we don't really need that. And then we correct the column name to rank. And there we have it. I think I have a quick look down to make sure it's all looking correct, but yeah, that is January sorted quite nicely. The final step that I do is to append those 3 months' worth of data all together into the one query. And yep, and after doing that, we've got to go ahead and just correct all the mismatched columns. So there's quite a few columns here that have got labels that are slightly different. Yeah, so that is pretty much it. There's a few other steps we might do to get this thing ready for modeling, but this whole video was simply to demonstrate how PowerQuery can be used to wrangle data from different sources in different structures. So to that purpose, it's done its job. Okay, so this brings it to the end of this video. So I hope you found it useful. And yeah, thanks for watching.